What does that even mean, Bowers Game Corner? Ahoy there, YouTube! I'm back again today for another game review. Today I'm very excited to check out Battlestar Galactica, the board game from Fantasy Flight Games. This is for 3 to 6 players, ages, I'd say 14 and up, and it'll take you about 2 to 3 hours to play. And in Battlestar Galactica, the board game, you are going to be trying to reach Earth before evil Cylons destroy your ship and, well, tear you apart from the inside. What am I talking about? Let's open it up and see how it works. But before we do that, I do want to mention, full disclaimer, I do my best to describe how the gameplay in this game works, but there is so much going on, and I've never seen the TV show, so the next 12 minutes down here are going to be kind of jumbled. So you might just want to skip to the end where I give you my thoughts on the game. Full honesty here. Okay, we're going to be taking a look at Battlestar Galactica, the board game. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention I've never seen the TV show, and normally I try and get pretty in-depth on how the gameplay works, but this game is just so vast and so big that I'm not even going to begin to try and scratch the surface. I'm going to try and give you an impression of how the game works. So first and foremost, we got our handy-dandy rule booklet. It is 32 pages, double-sided, full color. It is an absolute beast. It's pretty well done, but it's not as well done as I would like. So I highly recommend that if you're just learning this game now, or learning the game new, that you go find a Watch It Played video. I don't know if Rodney's done one on this from Watch It Played, but if he has, absolutely check it out because it will save you some time and some pulling out your hair. Now, normally I cover all the components, but as you can see, there are tons and tons and tons of components. So I'm going to pull a couple really important ones to the side, and then we're just going to brush the rest of them over here because we don't have time to go over all of them. So we're going to have the miniature ships over here, and then we're just going to go, we're going to push all that to the side. So in this game, what are you going to be doing? Well, you're going to be trying to get to glorious, beautiful Earth. Or whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called, if it's Earth or what it is. But you're going to be on this ship with other people trying to get to Earth. And the way you get to Earth is by essentially getting 8 points. You're going to be getting these points by jumping from, I think it's planet to planet or something. Like I said, I've never seen the show, which definitely hurts. But it's not that simple because you're not just playing against the game itself, but you're also going to be playing against what's called a Cylon. Cylons, for all intents and purposes, are going to be traitors. They are robots who look like human beings who are going to try and secretly sabotage your missions. And then once you figure out who they are, they have they can then become non-secret, and then they can just really try and screw up your missions of getting back to Earth. This can be a very difficult game. So when you first start the game, we're going to try and hit on the important stuff. You're going to get one of these roll cards. And the roll cards are going to have a couple important things. First, what cards you're going to be able to draw, because these cards are going to be what's going to help people deduce who is in fact the good or the bad guys in this game. Because if no one else gets, say, red cards, and a red card is played on a negative vote, which doesn't make much sense to you right now, then they'd be like, okay, put him in jail, because there is a jail. But let's just get back to here. So what's on these cards? Well, first and foremost, you're going to have 3 special abilities here. One is going to be negative, which everyone's going to have a negative ability. One is going to be a really, really good one-time per game. And this is like a 2 to 3 hour game. One time per game use. And then one's going to be the use that you can use on every single turn. And there's going to be a couple different kinds of characters in the game. First, there's going to be green people, which are military leaders. If you're a military leader, you could potentially be the admiral, which will give you some more special abilities, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. Next, you're going to have pilots. You're obviously going to be more focused on flying around these little miniatures, which are called Vipers and Raptors, and trying to shoot all the bad guys who are trying to your ship, because you will have lots of bad guys trying to shoot down your ship. You're going to have political leaders, and one of these people is going to start off as the president of the Battlestar Galactica, and they're going to get a deck of cards which will do some really, really cool, powerful special abilities. But you can't just do whatever you want, because other people can actually vote you out of the president's office. But that kind of is a waste of time, so you really, it's a cool little mechanic. So we got our pilot, we got our political leader, we got our, there's the last one. We have support. This guy essentially is going to be able to get engineering cards, which means he's going to have some various cool different abilities. Not really that cool, but he's going to be able to put out fires and whatnot, because you're going to be getting attacked constantly by lots of things, including these bay stars, which will try and shoot you, and then you're going to need him to go ahead and fix things, because if they hurt you, then they're going to be hurting various different rooms throughout your ship. So let's take a look at our ship on here. We got our big old ship right here, and we have another ship over here. We'll get more into how that works in a few minutes. So next we'll go through this big pile of cards. Not really, though. There's going to be 5 main colors of cards in here. There's going to be politics cards, leadership cards, tactics cards, piloting cards, engineering cards, and these are going to have numbers, I believe, 1 through 5 on them, and they're going to give you various different special abilities that you can use as actions or reactions. Some will modify dice rolls, some will give you an extra chance to roll dice, some will sway votes or do very interesting different things, but these are really what you're going to be using to try and deduct who the bad guys are most of the time. So there's going to be 5 different kinds of rules of that. One more thing I want to mention about the deduction in this game, which really makes it kind of unique, is up here is where you're going to be putting what's called the Destiny deck. And the Destiny deck are going to be cards that are going on your votes every single time you vote, and they're going to be 2 completely random cards. So you're never going to completely know if Destiny might put -10 on a vote that you really want to pass. So that can definitely spice some things up. So let's get to the 2 special roles that I talked about a little bit earlier. We have the Admiral and we have the President. Let's start with the President first. The President is really, really cool. Essentially, he's going to have what's called quorum cards into their hands. Quorum cards are going to be very, very powerful. And you can play them as actions most of the time. So for this one, choose a character and discard to place them in the brig. Brig means they are in jail, which essentially means that they're not going to be able to vote on things. So if you're a Cylon and you're the president and you have this card, you can really mess some stuff up if you play it correctly. Some will let you potentially roll and gain morale or food or fuel or various different things that normally you would not be able to gain. But there's going to give you tons of various different special abilities. Now, the Admiral, on the other hand, is going to have a really cool special ability that he can launch nukes. Nukes are going to go, and they'll blow a bunch of stuff up, and they will save your fanny a lot of the time. But the other unique thing he's going to be able to do is he's going to be able to secretly pick out cards. Now, as I mentioned in this game, you're essentially going to be trying to get to the number 8 before you run out of resources. And your resources are going to be up here. Let's see if I can get them up there. It's going to get shaky as anything. But it's going to be right up there. And you're going to have these little trackers of fuel, food, morale, and population. If any of those ever go down to 0, you lose the game. So essentially, you're trying to get to the number 8 by jumping. And once you do a jump, which is on this track right over here, you're going to go back to the start, and then the Admiral is going to draw a couple of these cards, secretly look at them, and then decide which one he wants to do. There's going to be numbers on the bottom of those. It's going to either say 1, 2, or 3. So this one will say, lose 1 fuel. The Admiral may risk 1 Raptor to roll a die if something would happen. Now, this is just going to only add to the suspense. So, for instance, if you draw a bunch of 1 cards and you're continually picking 1s, people are going to be like, that guy's the Cylon. He's slowing down our progress to getting to 8. Which brings me over to our Cylon cards. Because in this game, you're going to start off and there's going to be a Cylon. And there might be 2, I believe, either. And the Cylon is going to be secret, and they're going to be trying to wreck the votes and do various different things, and you're hoping that they're not the Admiral or the President. But even if they're not the Admiral or President, they can do a lot of bad things by throwing in votes on what are called crisis cards. Because at the end of every single turn, you're going to draw a crisis card, which we'll go over these real quick as well. As you can tell, going over a lot of things. So you're going to draw, this is a good sample card. So for instance, right here, forced water mining. You are going to be a vote, and there's normally going to be a vote at the end of most rounds. And how this works is, if you pass, you'll gain a food. That's great, but if you fail, you're going to lose a population, and you're going to lose a morale, which is really bad, because those are these spinners up there, which, as I mentioned, if they get to 0, you're going to lose the game. Or, there's an alternative, +1 food, -1 morale, and each player discards 1 random skill card. So that might not be too terrible, especially if you guys are running low on skill cards. But how this works is, essentially, if you decide to do the vote, you're going to put 2 cards from the Destiny deck up here, as I mentioned, which are going to be completely random. No one will know what they are. And then you are going to vote. So every card that you play that is yellow, green, purple, or blue is going to be a positive card. So, for instance, this blue 5 would get you 5 points closer to the 17. You're going to go around the table, and everyone is going to either put in cards secretly, and they might say either weak or strong. So you might say, all right, weak, or I might say strong, and then the person that blew this card is going to put theirs in, and then they're going to mix them up. And if your number ends up being higher than 17, then hooray, you would gain a food. If it was lower, then you'd lose a population and lose a morale. But no matter what, you're going to do these two things on the bottom right here. The first one is bad stuff's going to come out and try and attack you. But this is a good symbol because this symbol means that you're going to move one closer on this jump track, which I mentioned right there. And at the end of every turn, you're going to draw some of these. Some of these you won't even get to vote. So this one, Admiral chooses, because as I mentioned, the Admiral and the President are going to have special cards that they can choose, and this is, going to be pretty big. -1 food, -1 morale, -1 population, -1 fuel, and bad stuff happening. But let's see. Sometimes you're going to have these, which are really, really bad, which just means stuff is going to appear and going to try and destroy your little things over here, which means you'll lose population, and lots of various other different things. I'm trying to fly through this as quick as I can, but I would feel remiss if I didn't show you the spots on the board, because there is lots going on this board as well. And as I mentioned, you're going to have your own little dude, and on your turn, you're going to be able to move and then take an action. So you can play an action card, or you can do any of these abilities on the board. So let's go over these real quick. So try and do this without get it all crummy here. So up here, we've got the FTL control room. And that means you're going to be able to jump the fleet, and that means you're essentially going to be able to do some stuff. You might lose population, but you're going to be able to essentially shoot some stuff. Weapons control, you're going to be able to attack Cylon's ship with Battlestar Galactica. That one doesn't get used too terribly often. Oh, you can barely even see this. Over here, command, you're going to be able to activate up to 2 unmanned Vipers, which I mentioned are going to be your good guys flying around space trying to shoot things. Communications, look at the back of 2 civilian ships. You may then move them to adjacent area. Research lab, which means you're going to be able to draw a certain type of cards. The armory means you're attack a Centurion on the boarding track. That doesn't mean anything to you, but it's up here, and I'll get to that, I guess, in a second. Command, you can activate, already did that, Admiral's Quarters. So choose a character, then pass the skill check to send them to the brig. So essentially, if you think someone is a bad person, then you can go there and vote to send someone to jail, which can really cripple them. Hangar deck, launch yourself in a Viper, and you can do this if you're a pilot, which means you can go out and fly and roll dice and shoot things. Last, you have sick bay, which you'll get sent to sometimes. You may only draw 1 skill card, because normally at the beginning of your turn, you're going to be able to draw 5 skill cards, but if you're there, you're only getting 1. And brig, which is jail. And if you're stuck here, the only action you can take is trying to get out of jail, so people will vote for you in jail. That's not all, though, folks, because up here we have the presidential thing. So the presidential's office, you're going to be able to draw quorum cards, which, as I mentioned, are really awesome, powerful cards. Press room, you're going to be able to draw 2 politics skill cards. And then administration, because, as I mentioned, if you're not a good president, people will potentially vote you out of presidential office, and then you'll have a new president. So it's really kind of crazy. Now, as I mentioned, someone's going to be a Cylon. Potentially 2 people are going to be Cylons. And if they get caught, or if they choose to reveal themselves, they'll then not be able to take part in a large part of the games, which means they're going to move their pawn up here. And up here, you're going to have 4 different various abilities that the Cylons are going to be able to take. They're also going to get, most of the time, a super crisis cards, which they'll play, which will do absolutely terribly horrible things that could potentially cripple the people on the ship. Last but not least, what can happen is a Centurion, which I don't know what that is, but it's a bad guy can get on board your ship. And if he ever slowly gets up on your ship and gets to this spot, then you also lose the game. But luckily, you can go to the spot right here and attack the Centurion. And holy dear moly, that is what you're going to get inside of Battlestar Galactica. Alrighty then, Battlestar Galactica, the board game from Fantasy Flight Games. What are my final thoughts? Let's go over the pros, let's go over the cons. First, on the con side, the game's not going to be for a lot of people. This is 2 to 3 hours, so this is definitely a lengthier game. Also, it only plays 3 to 6 players, and I would not recommend it with 3, borderline 4. Now, there is a 1-player variant, a 2-player variant. Never play them, ever. Just don't. They're terrible. I tried the 2-player variant once, and I couldn't even imagine the game 1-player variant. This would not be fun because you need the intrigues of the Cylons in there to get the most out of this game. Also, this game, if you could not tell from the middle part of this video, is incredibly complex when you first pick it up. And honestly, I'm 15 to 20 gameplays of this game in, and I still could not set up the board. I could not do half of the things in this game. I could not run this game. And I played it 15 to 20 times. I played tons of games. I host games of Twilight Imperium. I play very difficult games, and this is a very difficult game to wrap your brain around when you're first starting. So definitely go check out a Watch It Played video. My personal recommendation there. Other than that, I mean, there is quite a bit of luck in this game. There's definitely a good deal of luck. I mean, you're going to have dice rolling moments all the time, so if you're constantly rolling bad dice, that can screw you over. Also, there's going to be stand-up die moments where that can potentially affect the outcome of the game, and some people just don't like that much luck in a game. Also, what cards you draw, and that's definitely going to have an impact on the game. The last con I have is that the Cylon must be competent. If the Cylon is not competent, then this game can be very difficult, or can be way too simple. Oh, man. So, yes. As you cannot tell, this game is hard for me to talk about because it is so complex and because I've never watched the TV show. But I'm doing this review for one main reason and one reason only, and that is because everyone should try this game at least once because it is absolutely outstanding, a must-play game. Must-own game? I don't know if I'd go that far, though. So, let's go over to the pros. This game is absolutely outstanding. It's been my top 20 games of all time the last 2 years, I do believe, and I don't see it leaving anytime soon. Why do I love it? Because it's just so much fun. There are so many moving parts in this game. There's an admiral who's got special abilities, and a president who's got special abilities, and there's intrigue, and there's deduction, and there's all this sort of little stuff where you're like, he did this, but he did that, and I don't know what this is. And then there's special abilities just galore, and special abilities on the cards, and you might be the only person getting certain cards, but someone else can draw those cards, and they do special different things. And there's this sense of urgency the entire game that just grips you. It's 2 to 3 hours, but you never truly feel safe. Every second, the next card could just crush you, or the Cylon could just come out and do this or do that, and you never know when you're safe. You are never safe. You never know. Well, until the Cylons reveal themselves, you never know if someone suspects you, and someone might send you to jail, and then you're in jail, and you're like, no, I'm not a bad guy. Believe me, guys. And then you just sit in jail, and you have to convince them with your actions, but you're handcuffed. You can't do anything, and you're just stuck there, and it's terrible. And it's absolutely fantastic. I have never seen the TV show. I've never saw 1 second of the TV show, and this is one of my favorite games of all time. And everyone that I've talked to has seen the TV show and said that it just enhances your enjoyment of the game. Battlestar Galactica. If you've never played it, I absolutely say that you need to play it. But this is by no means a must-own game. Don't go out there and just say, man, you really love this game, I gotta go buy it. No, this is actually one of those games where you definitely try before you buy, and if someone you have who's close to you knows how to run this game, then just play it with them, because this is definitely a very hard nut to crack. But if you can crack it, definitely do it, because nearly everyone I've played this with has really enjoyed it once they get past that big hurdle. So Battlestar Galactica, not from sci-fi, from Fantasy Flight Games. One of the best games of all time, but also one of the most difficult to understand everything that's going on games of all time. So, if you consider yourself somewhat of a hardcore gamer, be sure to check it out. And if you're not a hardcore gamer, straddle yourself onto one of these and enjoy the ride, because it is still a heck of a fun ride. That's Battlestar Galactica, the board game from Fantasy Flight Games. If it looks like it might be your cup of tea, be sure to check it out. Also, if you enjoyed this content, please be sure to click on the subscribe button down below. Also, in the comments below, let me know what is the deepest, most complex, most just pull your hair out kind of game, because for me, this one might be it. I thought I did a pretty good description of Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition, so I was like, Battlestar Galactica shouldn't be too difficult. And then I tried to shoot this video like 2 or 3 times. And I was 12 minutes into the video, and I was like, oh dear God, I barely even begun to get half of it. So then I started whittling things away. So needless to say, for me, personally, this is the most complex game that I have ever attempted to review, but I'm glad I got it out of the way. So now I never have to do it again, hopefully. But needless to say, check it out and post in the comments below, what is the most complex game that you have ever played? Let me know. And as always, thanks for your time, YouTube.
That was the review for Battlestar Galactica, the board game. For more reviews and previews, check back at Bowers Game Corner.